4-38. Look at the graph at right. What statements can you make about the tile pattern that the graph represents? How many tiles are in figure 0, figure 1? What is the pattern of growth? What is the rule for the pattern? Okay, so let's take a look at this graph. We can see, and let's look at the first question they have. What statements can you make about the tile pattern that the graph represents? Well, let's see. How many tiles are in figure 0? Okay, so we know with tile patterns, figure 0 is the number of tiles that you start with before you add tiles and start growing. And so we can find figure 0 by looking at where 0 is on the x-axis, which is the figure number. And so the the x-axis, 0, is right here, which is where the y-axis intersects the x-axis. So the y-axis turns out to be figure 0, essentially, or where the graph crosses the y-axis is figure 0. So when we look at this scale, we notice that for every square, the numbers go up by 2. So at 0, it goes to 2, 4, 6, and 8. And this line intersects right between 6 and 8, so that must be 7. So that's where it intersects the y-axis. So right away, I say to myself, okay, so I know that in the slope-intercept form, B is figure 0, but it's also the y-intercept. So it's where it intersects with the y-axis. So I know that B is going to be 7, right? And it's a positive 7. So I can put plus 7 for that. Okay, so now let's look at the pattern of growth. So it looks like for every one tile or every one figure number that this line goes up, it goes up 2 units for y. And so that ends up being a growth of plus 2 that I'm seeing in the graph. And so if we know that the growth is plus 2, then that means there's a positive 2 that goes in front of the x. So this is what I think our rule is going to be for this pattern. But let's take a look. We can also check that by doing a table, and we'll put x and y in here. And this is the figure number, and this is the number of tiles, y is. All right, so our first value for 0, we know that that's 7. So now looking at this graph, where does it cross when we're at figure number 1? It looks like we're even with 9. And so for figure 1, it looks like the number of tiles is 9. And then if we look at figure 2, it looks like the number of tiles is going to be 11. And if we look at figure 3, it looks like the number of tiles is going to be between 12 and 14, which would be 13. All right, so then we can look at figure 0, which is 7, and that matches up with our rule. We can look at figure 1, which is 1 and 9. So we're answering one of the questions up here. It says, how many tiles are in figure 0, figure 1? And then we think the pattern of growth is the change in the number of tiles. So from 7 to 9, it's plus 2. From 9 to 11, it's plus 2. And from 11 to 13, it's plus 2. And that matches up with what we thought the growth was in, in the rule that we put together by looking at the graph. So now we've verified that this is the rule. And we did it by looking at the graph and looking at the y-intercept and then how much it grows, in other words, the slope. And then we also looked at it in the table. Here's our figure 0. And then we saw that the number of tiles grows by plus 2 each time.